My name's Brian Angus, and I'm a Wagyu breeder from South Africa. Firstly, I'd just like to thank the association for extending an invitation to make a presentation. I'm sorry that I can't be in Australia. I've been to many of your conferences, and I've learned a lot at your conferences. What I'm going to just tell you about today is about our journey in Wagyu, how we progressed from being Angus cattle breeders to starting the breed in South Africa. I started the breed. So I'm a third generation cattle farmer here in South Africa. I farmed with my grandfather and with my dad. Like I said, initially we started with Angus cattle, and then when I heard about Wagyu, I decided that I wanted something different, and I wanted the best. Probably the start was when Don Nicol came to South Africa. He was actually looking for Bonsmara bulls for the A company. And he came over and spent the night at my place, and we were having a chat around the barbecue, and I mentioned the Wagyu. And Don put me in touch with Mr. Takeda's people in the States. And that's how I bought embryos from Mr. Takeda, exported them to South Africa. And initially there were obviously no Wagyus. Nobody actually heard of Wagyu in South Africa. So the government let me bring them in as like an experiment through the Agricultural Research Centre. So I brought in the embryos and we put them into Angus surrogate cows. And I think out of the 30 embryos, we got 17 calves, 9 of which were bulls, as normally would happen. We had to do a biological impact study to ensure that the Wagyu had the good beef that everyone was speaking about. So for me, initially, once the cattle were born, I'd never seen a Wagyu. So when those little scrawny little calves were born on the farm, that was the first time I'd seen a Wagyu. And anyway, we grew them out from the Angus cows, and I had to send all 9 bulls to the research centre where they were put on growth tests. And I think the feed was for a 2 kilogram gain, and we were only getting 1 kilo on the Wagyus. But at the end of the day, the test went well, and they slaughtered 3 of my bulls. It was the best beef that they'd ever tested in South Africa. They used the Warner Bratzel shear test, and they said I can start with the Wagyus. So then from there, for 9 years, I bred the Wagyus just on my own, on the farm. Hardly anybody knew I had them. I think the big reason was that they were kind of ugly, and I didn't want my neighbors to see them. So I bred and slowly started breeding up, and I needed semen. And then I contacted Don, and then he put me in contact with Marianne Gibbons at the AACO. And that's how my friendship with Gibbo started. My first bull's semen that I imported, the initial livestock was from Mr. Takeda. They weren't very highly marbled cattle. And so Gibbo said I should start with the 003 bull, which I did. And things progressed, and I used the 001 bull as well. And then Gibbo said to me, well, if you want to learn more about Wagyu, you've got to come over to Australia to the conference. And that was probably, 9 years ago. It was the first conference I attended. And I must say, there is no place in the world where you can learn more about Wagyu in 3 or 4 days. The conference itself, from the very first one, was very informative. I think in terms of genetic breeding, the Wagyu is far ahead of anybody else. Being an Angus breeder and going to the States for many years, and seeing what the Angus people did, this was a step above. And then obviously the carcass data that's been collected by the Wagyu Association has been fantastic. I started off from the start. When I finished the first conference, I came back to South Africa, and I decided, well, it's time to try and start the breed in South Africa and get the breed registered. which I did. I managed to do. It was government gazetted as a breed, and I think we started off. The first meeting was in my office on the farm, and I think it was 7 people. And I think today we're 160 breeders of Wagyu. Anyway, we moved from that conference. I met a lot of people. I must say, the big plus point of the conference is you meet a lot of people from Aussies, mostly, and then people from overseas as well that are also starting and sitting with the same dilemmas as I have. I must say, the Australians were very helpful, and I found it easy to start with Wagyu. I'd just like to give you a little info about the industry in South Africa. The cattle industry in South Africa is mainly centered around the feedlots. There's normally about 400,000 cattle on feed, I guess, all year round. They're short fed. The cattle come in at 220, 230 kilos, and they leave at 450 kilos. So they fed a pretty hot ration. And the carcasses are weighing 210, 220, 230 kilos once they're slaughtered. So the whole industry is based around on that system. I'd say the feedlots probably control the whole industry in South Africa. So for coming from my situation, where the classification system doesn't take marbling into consideration, it was a pretty big ask. Nobody had heard about marbling. Very few people knew about marbling when I started. Maybe a few chefs at hotels, 5-star hotels and so on. So to get started was not easy. Even until today, our grading system doesn't take marbling into consideration. In retrospect, it was actually a good thing for me because it was like open territory, because nobody had a product the same as what I had. If I showed a chef, our carcasses, we fed our carcasses up to 400 kilos, our cattle up to 600, 700 kilos, with the help of Gibbo, obviously giving me the rations, helping me with the rations, and the genetics. We had a totally different product. And even though we had very little to sell, was a lot of, the start was a lot of cool boxes, walking from restaurant to restaurant, from chef to chef, from hotel to hotel, to try and market the product. A few of the people, the chefs, understood the product. A lot of people I had to test it and cook it for them. And once I'd eaten it, they were hooked. Once you've eaten Wagyu beef, there's nothing like it. And it's a pretty easy sell. The classification system, I just left the South African one, and I just started using the marbling scores, the same as what I got from Ozmeat, which Gibbo helped me get, and Don Nickel. And I started grading my own carcasses with the chips, which I found to work well. And the people that I explained the chips to and showed the product to understood how it worked. So from then, I had an auction or two, and the Wagyu started becoming more and more popular. The more people heard about it, that got into the news media, onto television, and the Wagyu just took off. I think within 3 or 4 years, there were 5 or 6 or up to 10 or 12 people from South Africa going to the Wagyu conference. Because I said to them, if you want to learn about Wagyu and meet contacts and people that can help you, the best place to go, obviously was to Australia. In terms of on the farm, I realized that if I wanted to progress with the Wagyus, I couldn't just have, the purebred or the full blood cattle. I needed numbers to be able to market. It's no good having a marketing budget and you don't have product. So I started using my own bulls and then importing semen to use on my Angus cows. And slowly but surely, my whole Angus herd, even my registered cattle, were bred to Wagyus. Either we put embryos in. I imported a lot of embryos from the ACO, from Greg Gibbons, and numerous other people. while I was in Aussie, I bought probably 10 or 15 cows that I took to embryo stations to get flushed. We just left them there in the export section, and we'd flush them every 2 to 3 months, and then bring the embryos over to South Africa, which I found that worked very well. And then the calves that were born from the F1 Angus cows, Gibbo taught me to creep feed from a young age, to grow them out properly. And I must say, from the start, using the Angus base and the bulls that Gibbo, recommended to me, made a very good product, and it was easy to sell, and they grew quite faster than obviously the full blood cattle. And the market in South Africa was not prepared to pay those high prices for just the full blood genetics. So that was a way of getting into the market. During this time, I met Joe Gross, Dr. Gross, and he helped me a lot. I've eventually bought a camera from Gibbo, the MIJ camera, the Japanese camera, and Dr. Gross helped me a lot to get the camera going, and we brought it to South Africa, and I started taking images, and sending them to Japan and getting the results back, which did help a lot with my selection. So I'm very indebted to Joe Gross for all his help, and even until today we're good friends, and he helps me a lot with his advice. And then once our numbers started growing, and I was actually running farming. We plant maize, and we were planting wheat at that stage, and we had merino sheep. So I've got quite a diversified business. My daughter Megan started helping me. She was actually overseas in America, and basically I think she realized that I needed help with the marketing, which was a godsend. Megan came and joined us on the farm and set up the whole marketing situation. We branded our cattle properly. She'd studied marketing, so it was very easy. And so for probably the first 4 years, we built a deboning facility on the farm. Megan knows a carcass like very few other people do, and is able to, we were able to market probably every cut of the carcass, which made it easy. We all know it's easy to sell the prime cuts, but then it's not easy to sell chuck and bowler. Anyway, so Maggie joined us on the farm, and that made a big difference. The marketing I left up to her, and actually the whole deboning, and the transport and all that Megan did. So I just concentrated on the breeding of the cattle and the feeding. So our feedlot grew, and eventually we had about 500. One of the big steps that we managed to get right in South Africa is we appointed a very good CEO. We appointed Dr. Michael Bradfield, who had vast knowledge in terms of genetics. He actually studied in Armidale. So Mike jumped into the setting up of the certified Wagyu program we have in South Africa, which I think a lot of countries are actually looking at us now and wondering if they shouldn't have done it from the beginning. So we do a genetic evaluation. We've got I think 2 or 3 cameras now to take images of carcasses. From the onset, when I was in Australia, I realized that breed plan was a big plus point, and from when I came back to South Africa, I started using breed plan, and then obviously our association, the Wagyu Association, also carried on with breed plan. And Dr. Bradfield had a lot of experience. He'd been working in Armidale, so it was a no-brainer for us. He himself, Dr. Bradfield, has done exceptionally good work for us. I think he must be a world leader in terms of genetics, and so it fits us, like a glove, his help. And then when Graham Truscott finished at the Australian Wagyu. He came over to South Africa as a consultant, and he set up the structures for us, for our association, and then also for the breed evaluation, and for the genetic evaluations. So at this stage, because we were small and we had the systems in place, it's our growth's been exponential. I think the biggest problem we have in this country is we don't have enough product. The economy of scale, and with this certified South African Wagyu beef program, all breeders can partake, and we have a lot more animals at our disposal, to market. Our next big push is going to be for exports. South Africa can produce Wagyu beef much cheaper than most countries in the world, because our land's cheaper, our maize is pretty cheap, we have cheap labour, and then obviously we're importing a lot of genetics from Australia and from the States, which is probably the same genetics as what you guys are using, everybody else is using. So we can land a product here at the airport or at the harbour at 70% of what the rest of the world can produce the same product. So the future for exports in this country look very good. When it comes to the certification program that we have in South Africa, it's a worldwide trend. People are on the internet, especially now with the COVID, and reading up about the product. And the people are looking for a healthy product. They want to know where your cattle come from, where does the meat come from, how have these animals been treated, what have they been fed, do they have shade, do they have water. So in our certification system, the South African system, we have protocols where breeders have to adhere to certain minimum standards. And this ensures the product for the consumer at the end of the day. So the certified, South African Certified Wagyu Beef Program guarantees that the product has undergone these strict protocols, and that the product's good for the consumer, which is a massive plus point. There are very few breeds or brands in the world that can vouch for the stuff that we do in South Africa. And it is a marketing tool as well. I understand that, and it does work. It costs us money, but at the end of the day, Wagyu is a superior product, and the consumer that buys our stuff is on the internet, and they want to know that it's a healthy product.
The demand for Wagyu beef is rapidly increasing in South Africa, and with this increased demand comes the responsibility of supplying a high-value product that meets certain standards and consumer requirements. When it comes to the end consumer, quality and price are two of the most important factors in the purchase decision-making. When it comes to Wagyu, quality is the single most important factor. So how can you be assured the Wagyu you purchase is a quality product? The South African Wagyu Society have developed a scientific Wagyu certification system and protocol, Certified Wagyu Beef, to ensure the product you purchase is Wagyu, it is hormone-free, and ethically produced. Furthermore, it can be traced throughout the value chain. The Certified Wagyu Beef endorsement on your package ensures product integrity and consistency, improving an authentic Wagyu eating experience. Be sure to look for this trademark logo next time you buy Wagyu beef. How does Certified Wagyu Beef ensure Wagyu product quality? Each role player throughout the Wagyu value chain commits to a protocol and are certified to produce Wagyu beef. Independent audits of key role players across the Wagyu value chain, including producers, feedlots, abattoirs, wholesalers, retailers, and restaurants is conducted to ensure compliance. Furthermore, a Wagyu carcass camera is used to provide objective data on carcass quality and marbling score. The Certified Wagyu Beef endorsement is the final stamp of approval. It adds value to producer brands, their reputation, assisting with superior brand recognition, and builds customer loyalty and trust in the South African Wagyu value chain and Wagyu beef products enjoyed by customers. Buy Certified Wagyu beef and play your part to promote Wagyu integrity.
So we're members of the World Wagyu Secretariat, actually founding members, which is an advantage for us. This year we hosted a Wagyu World Conference, and being a member of the Secretariat, where the countries swap out information about Wagyu, try and work together. I hope that one day we'll have a world genetic evaluation, which would make it much easier for all of us. For me, it's actually a no-brainer because we're all using the same genetics. We don't have, it's much easier to work with a database where a lot of the cattle are linked. So we've had good growth, in terms of Wagyu breeders, number one, and then also in the amount of product that we've been selling. The numbers of cattle that have been registered are going up steadily, as you can see on the graph. And also the consumer is starting to learn about Wagyu. At this stage, we have 3 of the big retailers that are marketing Wagyu. Some of them just started. So there's a domestic market for Wagyu, which is on the increase. The membership's increasing. If we look at the imports of embryos and semen from especially Australia, that's on the rise. And but there are going to be a heck of a lot more commercial cattle bred to Wagyu bulls that we're going to have to find a market for. When it comes to packaging of the product, we're selling an expensive elite product. The packaging is extremely important for the consumer. It's got to look different because the meat tastes different. It does cost more money. If you look at the slides, you can see what we've been doing in terms of the packaging. This is mostly Megan's work. I don't do any of that. It flies off the shelf. It looks totally different on the shelf. It catches the consumer's eye. And people are prepared to try it for a start. And once they've eaten it, they come back. So in terms of people starting, breeders anywhere in the world starting with Wagyu, I think you must make sure that obviously your marketing must be good. But then, if you're going to spend money on marketing, make sure that your product's packaged properly and that it looks appealing on the shelf. Now, in the early days, to promote the Wagyu, I had information days on the farm. And to get good speakers, we had to get guys from Australia. So Greg Gibbons came out. He came out twice, actually, to come and to our information days. And then we were very fortunate to have Dr. Joe Gross come out. And I think we all know Joe knows a heck of a lot about Wagyus and breeding values and the genetics of Wagyu, which helped to promote the breed. And then also Dr. Kev Sullivan. I think all of us have met him. I met him at the Wagyu conference in the past, and Kev came out as well. So we had really good speakers. And then the last information day we had, Dr. Jerry Reeves came out from the USA. Jerry's a legend in terms of Wagyu. Just his knowledge about the breed, where it started, and what the different bloodlines do. So that was one way we used to promote the Wagyu, and we had a lot of people come to our information days, in the hundreds. So that was a good start for the Wagyu, and it promoted a lot of interest in the breed. And so a new venture that I've gone into is I got some friends from Australia that called me and asked me if I wanted to go into a syndicate with them to purchase 2 of the top bulls in Aussie, which we did last year. So our syndicate's called Quality Genetics International. And we bought 2 bulls, one from Scott de Bruin from Mayura, and then we bought a Circle 8 bull as well, Q122. And so the aim of the syndicate is to tap the bulls and market the semen internationally, which we have done. And it's actually worked out very well. I'm very pleased that these guys approached me to become part of the syndicate. And so we're selling semen into Europe, and the bulls are getting a lot of traction and a lot of attention in the USA. So that's our latest venture, which I'm very happy to be a part of. So I must say thank you to Pete Bishop and Joe Gross and Michael Katz for including me in the venture. I've been asked to just tell the guys what I've been using in terms of genetics on the farm. And what I'm going to say is I think it's probably the usual suspects. I started off with Gibbo's bulls, Hiroshige Tayasu, the 001 bull, Kitatore Sudoi, the 003 bull, and then we used the Rookie 2. And then I used a Michifuku back onto those to get a bit more marbling in. I just found the Michifuku cattle were a little bit small. And then probably the bull that made one of the biggest differences for me was Ito Shigenami, the TF148 bull. He's done exceptionally well in terms of putting carcass onto most of my cattle, and especially in the F1 breeding that we did. Then I used Izuduruzoi, TF151. He put a bit more size and milk into the cattle. Then I used Ichigo Farms Maifuku, Shigatani, Kitaguni Jr., Yasufuku Jr., and then the bull that they definitely did the most for me is a bull that we all saw at one of the conferences from Westholme. It was the Westholme Rimichi Tsuru bull, 758. I think we had a chance to buy that bull, all of us that went to that conference. Well, it was a big mistake, we never bought the bull. He's made a massive difference in our herd. The Rimichi Tsuru cattle are big. They've got milk, they're capacious, they walk well, they've got pretty good udders, above average marbling, and he's definitely made a massive difference. And I think worldwide, if there was more semen available, he'd make a big impact. And then I had cows that said Wisers that we were flashing for export. And I went there one day to go and have a look at my cows, and when I drove in, I saw this like Angus bull standing there. And we were done looking at my cows, and I said to Sid, can I go and have a look at the bull? And he said, no, well, that's a Wagyu. And that's where I saw the Coates G113 bull. Well, I'd never seen a Wagyu bull as nice as him. Structurally perfect. He looked like a big Angus bull. The bull walked well, had muscle. Oh, I was amazed. Anyway, I bought semen from the bull with a lot of negotiating. Managed to get semen, and his calves are looking very nice. And then the Michifuku, the Coates Michifuku bull 154, he's done very well for me. So I must say the new generation genetics that I've used have definitely increased the size of the cattle. We still have to put more milk in. I'm sure the milk is a problem in the breed, I think. We'll have to get lines with more milk. Because the volume, the size that we have managed to get with G113, 154, and then Hirimichi Tsuru. So I think for the future, those are the bulls that I'm going to be using, and they've actually made a big difference in the herd. And then I'd just like to thank the association for inviting me to do a presentation. I'm sorry that I can't make it there. I've got a lot of good friends. Enjoy the rest of your conference, and enjoy the tour, and that's probably where I made my best friends. I just want to say you guys must behave yourselves, and you know who I'm speaking to.